Hello everyone, it's your favorite Western now in space here, and it's no secret that I talk about World of Darkness stuff here a fair bit. So obviously I was keyed in to the news when Curseborne was announced and came out and all that jazz. And I've been wanting to talk about it for a while, but either I never knew what I wanted to say about it, or more accurately, I wanted to say it but didn't get the time to do it, and then something changed in its development, so I couldn't talk about it. However, I've always had the opinion that the game felt before it came out, all the ads and promotionals were terrible. I don't mean the game itself was terrible. I mean that the promotionals, the ads, everything people were talking about was terrible. I explained the game. I was deeply felt that the game didn't know what it wanted to be. It was overall just a attempt to try to copy the World of Darkness without quite understanding how it works. However, my opinions have changed after actually getting my hands on the core book, and I want to talk about them. Now, this won't be me delving into, the deep lore or whatever of the game, or talking about, stuff like that, or builds or characters or anything like that. I wouldn't mind doing that at some later point, but this is more my first thoughts / reviews, if that makes sense. So it's going to be a little bit off the cuff, a little bit messy, but I want to do it because not many people are really doing that, and I think it needs to be done. So anyway, let's begin. So I'm going to open this discussion on the curse / player characters themselves, rather than give an overview of the world, or if that makes sense. Now, this is going to sound a bit weird, I admit, but just you'll see what I'm saying when we get there, okay? So the accursed are different types of supernatural, and they come in 5 main families, lineages, and then they have sub-families in them that kind of act like subgroups, but it's a little messy because rather than just say, oh, they are okay, you're a vampire, but then you have different lineages of vampires. The game is extremely inconsistent about whether these are informal groups you can join or groups you're born into because of the nature of your curse. I think some definitely are one way or the other, but then lore contradicts it. It's like they couldn't settle down of whether being part of one of these subgroups is just part of your nature, or basically can't tell if being a part of a family when you're in a lineage is being part of a clan in Vampire the Masquerade, or joining a tribe in Werewolf the Forsaken. Either way, let's get into them. The first are the Dead, which are probably the most misleading name in many ways because they're the ghosts, which is confusing because there's 3 other types of ghosts in the game, but the Dead are ghosts. They are ghosts, but specifically they are the Risen in Wraith the Oblivion because they all have bodies. Not always their original bodies, but they have bodies. Now, they are interesting because they definitely kind of struggled, in my opinion, with how to do them when they would design the game, in my opinion, because they feel all over the place a little bit, and I don't think that, they were clearly trying to deal with the fact that a ghost character is always intangible and stuff like that is difficult to work with in a non-ghost related game, which is something that the World of Darkness has always struggled with in crossover things, and they did okay. But, I'm just gonna be frank here, the Dead in this game, the ghosts, suck. And I don't mean that to be, obviously their life sucks, they're a supernatural monster in an urban fantasy horror game, but, they literally feed off emotion, and not even just the way of, most of the time how ghosts, in other or World of Darkness properties tend to work, where they just feed on emotion around them. No, they explicitly feed by causing emotion. And most of them are very, very bad emotions they cause. There's subtypes of stuff like horror and fear and nihilism. It's quite frankly, they are not good people in any stretch of the imagination, which is funny because, it's just not really a choice they get. Honestly, it's kind of it's just, I don't know why any other curse would hang out with them for the most part, because, they are not good to be around. Next are the Hungry, or vampires, if you, have brains. They're pretty much exactly what you expect. They have an interesting little twist on their mechanics that they don't have most of the vampire weaknesses by default, but they can boost themselves up temporarily but cause themselves to gain a weakness for a scene, which is kind of interesting. I think it's a little messy, but not a bad way to differentiate them. What's funny, though, is that they're normally how they feed is off of blood, and all jazz, and it works by the stand, they can't have to kill a person to drink, blah, 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 blah. But, almost all of their subtypes change it in some way to make them absolutely the worst. Oh yeah, we're just gonna take your emotions, or your memories, or your fucking soul. Quick addendum with one of the vampire families that is, just straight up worships demons and eats souls. why exactly do anyone hang out with these guys? Like, that's one of the things I always find very notable in the World of Darkness, especially Old World, is that generally pretty much everyone drew the line at working with demons there. Like, they work. I mean, allying with demons is just bad stuff. Bad stuff. Don't do that. But yeah, these guys are just hanging around like they aren't like the biggest problem in the room. Next are the Outsiders, and the Outsiders are basically it's supposed to be like the sense of like angels and demons and other like extraplanal entities, but then sometimes they just are those guys, and sometimes the people who are exposed to them. This is one of the problems with Curseborne, where they can't keep lore consistent. They have to have almost everything be possible rather than just settling down for a second. But overall, they're one of the better designed ones. What's interesting is that their issues of dealing with humans aren't that bad. I mean, like, all of them have their issues with dealing with people, but like the madness or whatever you want to call it they cause if they, lose control of the powers, quote unquote, isn't that bad. Like, it's totally a manageable thing for everyone involved for the most part. But they all also have a link to the other dimensions of the game, which we'll get to. But they can't really stick around in them mostly because they're trapped. They are supposedly trapped inside the normal world, which is an interesting dynamic. The sub-families and groups are also very interesting. There are clear responses to different how you might go about them. Like the battleground angels are like fighting, protect the earth, and like some of them make deals and stuff like that. And like, they're all perfect, but the Outsiders are perfectly solid. They do have an issue, in my opinion, where they kind of feel like they should have just been their own game line. Like, they don't need the other four to be around. We'll dig in more of that later, but like, they almost feel like they should have been their own game, in my opinion, because it feels like they just have nothing going on with the others, really. Next are the Primals. The Primals are basically your rare creatures, and they're interesting because I just want to say this up front. Out of all of the supernatural you could be forced to be in this game, the Primals got the easy end of the stick. I mean, there's always been a dynamic with urban fantasy RPGs and World of Darkness stuff of the dynamic of the characters slowly slipping into like a superheroes with fur and fang territory. Yeah, the Primals, like the werewolf cousins before them in the other World of Darkness games, jump that line completely because they are just straight up like borderline superheroes. Like, they all have elemental powers based on their types. They're supposed to be like, oh, they can barely control the beast inside, but like all of them just as default can just like whenever the beast or the creature or whatever you want to call it takes control, they can just say no and just take a mild penalty to all rolls to deal with it. I mean, like, their weaknesses are pretty easy to get around. Like, they got the easy end of the stick, and they aren't any less powerful than the others, really. So it's like, you really got the good end of the stick. But what's funny is the Primals is, most of the lines don't, like, every single family has, like, quote-unquote, their opinions on most of the other families in their group, their lineage. But yeah, it doesn't really feel like they know each other as groups. Just, oh yeah, I know one guy from this group, or I know a stereotype. But yet the Primals, all their groups actually have proper dynamics with each other. Most groups respect the werewolves as being good, as protecting. Most have some respect for the raptors, who are kind of like the dinosaur ones that kind of like act as their oldest and leaders. Everyone has some suspicions about the Hides because they're new, etc., etc. And it's like the only one of the 5 lineages that actually feels like the different families interact with each other in a meaningful way, in my opinion. And that leads up with the sorcerers, or the mages, or the wizards, or the drug addicts, I might as well call them, because that's what it's going to feel like. I'm just going to get out of the way. If you were to be in this world, and you realize you're about to become a sorcerer, do anything to keep that from happening, because that would suck. I'm just going to get this over with, right? This is a bit more mechanical, a bit lore-wise here. So, you know how in most fantasy settings or whatever, they say, oh, magic always has a cost, and then it's like a mana thing? Yeah, no. These sorcerers got that bad in a state, because all the magic costs something even rules-wise. Like anything from phone, to memories, to feelings, to emotions, to connections, to health, to anything. All of it. There's no getting around it, by the way. There's no like, oh, if you do this, no, you just gotta eat that every single time. And not even like in a casting component kind of way. Being a sorcerer in the game sucks, okay? And to make on top of all that, you might think, well, I just won't use magic that much. But it gets worse for you because mages are addicted to using magic. Sorcerers are addicted to using magic. Not just in general, where they have to they might be just actually addicted, though many of them are. Is that they have to use it to stay alive. If they go more than a day without using it, they start feeling ill. If they go more than a week, they start bleeding from the eyes and stuff. And they can't go more than a month, they just die. So you have to have the worst magic, and they have the most varied magic in the game, but not even necessarily the most powerful, and it's undercut because none of the other 4 have to go through that. They don't have to sacrifice things constantly to use any amount of their power. It's like, Ooh. And you might think maybe the families are like, somehow there's some families maybe give them a workaround. No. Like, I'm just sorry. Being a sorcerer sucks. Lore-wise and rule-wise. Because rule-wise, you are being punished for every use of your magic that isn't, like, that why everyone else doesn't have to go through that. And once again, it's not like some of the other lineages have like horrible weaknesses that, well, nowhere near bad the sorcerer's ones at least exist, but the outcasts and the primals are just standing over there like the Giga Chads in the corner who know their weaknesses are nothing and their powers are just as good as everyone else's. So, while I do respect the game for being willing to let all the different monster types be their own thing and not like just be copy and paste jobs for the most part, they didn't do a very good job balancing them interactively, like why you would want to play them with each other, if that makes sense. Which has always been a problem with War of Darkness, but I felt like Chronicles of Darkness did that pretty good, for the most part, of keeping all the lines mostly in balance with each other, with a few odd exceptions. And then the War of Darkness, no one really balanced power scaling wise, but at least everyone kind of felt like they had to deal with their own shit. You know what I mean? The lineages in Curseborne are all over the fucking place about how much their lives suck. Like, once again, the primals and outcasts have it fairly easy, all things considered, while the sorcerers might as well just blow themselves up, because, oof, they're a danger to themselves and everyone around them by the method of existing. Oof. Anyway, that's enough about the player characters, and so let's go into the world itself, or lack thereof. Now, here is by far the most disappointing part of Curseborne, in my opinion, is that the world itself is boring. Like, the player lore and such is kind of interesting. It has a lot of odd elements that would need to be ironed out, but not bad, strictly speaking. But the world as a setting is boring. Like, first of all, it does that thing where it says, it's just like our world, but it's a little darker, and it keeps switching between them randomly. And this is another thing where the game is extremely uncommittal on anything. Like anything. Just refuses to be committal on anything. And it's kind of annoying after a while. But the main theme of this world is supposed to be curses. How everything is related to curses, how everyone's born with curses. But yet it never really manifests in a meaningful way, if that makes sense. I mean, it manifests a cohesive narrative thread. Like, it's like if everything's out to get you, but yet it's not like there's a force behind it. It's not like there's like some evil masterminds who are secretly controlling the curses, or like some ancient order that fucked everything up and now we have to deal with curses. It's just a natural part of the world that has little to no meaning. Like, it's just weird, and then it doesn't quite mesh like I think they wanted it to. I think there needs to be a deeper meaning behind it. Like. It's like, if I'm going to use like a Way of the Apocalypse for an example here, right? The worm is both a generic, big, bad, scary, corruption, but it also has a deeper meaning behind how it symbolizes the rot in the world. So it manifests in particular ways, if that makes sense. The curses in Curseborne needed something like that. They needed a personality, a meaning behind them. Right now, they're just too arbitrary, too bland, too non-specific to really have much weight. And that's supposed to be the underpinning of the entire world, and it doesn't work well. But also is that the game just doesn't have antagonists. Like, there is, okay, there are antagonistic forces. There are other monsters, and of course the families can bump into each other all the time. But yet there's no, like, for lack of a term, big bads, right? Not even, like, in the sense that they are, like, antagonistic in a strong way. Like, there's no Sabbat in Vampire, like in Vampire Masquerade. There's no Worm. There's no, like, Marauders or the Technocracy or anything like that. And there are some antagonist factors, but none fill the role of, like, having a big antithesis. Just nothing really kind of has. And this kind of hurts it because it really keeps the pressure off the player characters. Like, if the only thing keeping their pressure on is their personal, like, supernatural weaknesses, which can vary significantly of how much they really matter, and internal fighting, which doesn't, like, that's the thing, is the lineages do get into turf wars, but they aren't, like, at each other's throats enough to hold the same way of, like, the Camarilla and Sabbat fighting, or even something like the issues between the Anarchs and the Camarilla. There just isn't something like that for them. Or the tribes and wealthy nothing has enough personality, enough internal conflict. And that's another thing, is that the lineages and families don't really have a motivation. Like, okay, some of them do, like, oh, we want knowledge and that kind of thing, but it's all directionless. It's all no one has like some big goal they're working towards, or like some like personal rivalries that almost always overshadow others. It's just everyone's just kind of existing. And there is the trend of like everyone, and I do mean everyone, hating the guys at the top, hating whatever the rich or the powerful are, even when several groups are the rich and powerful themselves, so it feels a bit hypocritical. But when everyone does that, it's extremely boring, and also not meaningful in any particular way. Like, it just gets boring to hear about. Like, oh yes, I hate my bosses so much. It's like, okay, why do you take orders from at this point? It just happens over and over again. It gets really tiring. And then you get to just the fact that, like, it's like the game isn't... It's not that the world is bad, strictly speaking. It's not like there isn't stuff you could work with. It's just that it means nothing. There's no deeper meaning, really. No like... Not a lot of people have pointed out how the difference between something like the World of Darkness and the Chronicles of Darkness, or the New World of Darkness, was that of how it's scaled. World of Darkness was very world-spanning in a lot of ways. They were global organizations dealing with worldwide issues spanning hundreds of years, while Chronicles of Darkness was more personal, more focused on a local area, or a small area, or factions that maybe haven't been around as long, or have less reach. This isn't always entirely true, but it's a good method. Chronicles of Darkness was way more personal than the old World of Darkness in a lot of ways. Curseborne feels like they doubled down on that, and then forgot, like, the bigger stuff going on. So, it's not that it's bad, it's just to make it good, the world is just nothing. It's a nothing burger. It's not bad. It's not like there's anything offensive or bad, or, oh, this bit of lore makes it unplayable. It's not even like something like it's something like I don't like the Web of Pain and like Deviant, or like other bits of lore. It's not that strictly anything's bad in the lore. It's just nothing. And the thing is, it's not nothing you can't work with. There are building blocks, things you can play with. But the thing is, that's not because the game did not like set up a whole bunch of things for you to, like, a whole bunch of toys for you to play with and do whatever you want with. The game just like for example, something like GURPS, or any really like sandbox like type of RPG like that, or a non-specific or generic. It gives you like tons of toys and things you could do. Look at all the cool things you could do, or the cool information we can give. That's like the point of like a generic RPG where you can do whatever you want with it, right? But Curseborne doesn't do that. Everything's just kind of there in a bland soup with little personality to it. But the thing is, a competent GM and some good players could totally make a decent game out of this. And I don't mean like, oh, if we change all the rules and change all the laws. No, I don't mean anything really in that regard. I mean, like, just how they would interpret certain things, how they would create stories of the factions dealing with each other, or what monsters or whatever could be plaguing their area. And that does sound kind of fun. I'm not going to lie. It doesn't sound bad. It sounds quite fun. But the issue is there's no camaraderie in that. There's no, like, shared experience. Like, I'm being honest here, right? If you took 3 different groups of players that shared no GM, no player, and they weren't affiliated with the Onyx Path Publishing at all, right? They're just their own independent groups. You set them down, gave them Curseborne, and said they could do whatever, like they could run whatever game they want. I really believe that those 3 groups would probably have an okay to good time with the game. Maybe even a great time. But if you were to then have all the groups talk to each other about what they did or what their games felt like, they would not come up with similar answers. And I don't mean in the sense that, like, oh, D&D can play it a whole lot of ways, where at least, but not even like that, where something like D&D or Travel or Call of Cthulhu always has some common threads that tie even the most disparate games together. Curseborne doesn't have that. There's nothing really tying the game together. There's certainly stuff you could tie together, but it's not going to be because Curseborne put it there. It's going to be because you did it. Because you made the choice and made the game the way you wanted to play it. And I don't know how to feel about that. I mean, does it make the game bad, strictly speaking? No, because I think almost any GM and players could do it. But I don't want to praise the game for that either, because it didn't really do anything. It just kind of put some vague ideas in the room and kind of expects you to put it together. And then I don't want to praise the game for that, because then it's like, if everyone else did all the hard work to make the world interesting in their own tables, then is that really the game? doing it? Does the game deserve the praise for that? Or is it just that someone else finally did what the developers couldn't or wouldn't do? I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what to say. Like I said, if you want to pick up Curseborne, I think it's a good game. I think you could totally have some fun with it. But there isn't much of a unique identity to it. It's just kind of a blah. It's just kind of there. And once again, I think it's good. I don't want to say it's bad. I know I sound negative, but I'm just not sure what to say about it. You know, there's not much there. I would like to talk about the lore of the lineages and families a little bit, but I'm going to be frank. If I do like my lore videos on it, like I've done some of the other World of Darkness stuff, I'm going to be kind of frank. I'm going to have to make some stuff up. Like, these guys don't have enough to talk about to make a video about them. Like, I'm going to have to, like, kind of stretch them out a little bit and make some assumptions. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I just want to give that head warning, if that makes sense, okay? So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. You know, like, comment, subscribe if you agree. If you don't dislike, tell me why I'm stupid in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time.